Wish I would have a wife say, Sherwin, you need to go recall somebody. I'm on recalling nothing. You want to tell me to recall somebody? I'm going to talk to Alan because I have a feeling he's going to call us every day and give us updates and progress on his recall. Now, let me also say this. I'm a supporter of Andrea Pratt. I support her. I've been supporters of her entire family for my entire adult life. So that's where I am on that. But let me also say this. I don't live in the 1st District. So my influence on the sentiment of 1st District voters is pretty much non-existent because all politics are local. So that being said, going to take a break, going to come back, and we're going to, I guess, hear from Alan as he gives us progress on the recall. And the reason why I think this is important, it's not about picking a side whether you think that the alderwoman should be recalled or not. This is democracy in action. And sometimes it's ugly and sometimes it's things that we don't like. But in days and times of our bits and pieces of our democracy are being eroded away by the administration in Washington, this kind of democracy is still very valuable. So even though I personally don't agree with this recall, it is still a healthy, functioning part of our democracy that I still support. So I want to take a break, come back, let Alan yell into the phone and see where he's at on the recall. Who missed is fitting music to talk to. Alan, you're on 101.7 The Truth. Let me guess, you're out collecting signatures?
No, right now I'm actually listening to my dog had a little baby goo. Layla had something happen to her leg the other day. I'm going out to get her a cone, right? So she stops licking. I gotta do that, and then I gotta get my wife a couple things for. I'm over here in Brown Deer at the Aldi's. I was just waiting to go in. Yeah, let me say something here. I like Miss Pratt, okay? Miss Pratt has been to our home. Miss Pratt, I voted for Miss Pratt. I went out and I canvassed for Miss Pratt. I didn't have to. I did it because I liked her, and I believe she knows what's going on here. I mean, she came to my home. How I met Miss Pratt was after the election. Miss Pratt came to our home. The doorbell rang, and I answered the door, and I knew who it was, but I wasn't quite sure. And she said, "Hey," I said, "How are you?" She introduced herself and said, "I said, okay, let's talk." So we sat and we talked, and we talked about this thing, about this issue. At the time, I still do got an open. I have an open ethics complaint regarding our sitting aldermen and these developers, which has never been heard. I've been scheduled for hearings. They've blown me off. One time they blew me off. Second time they couldn't reach a quorum.
Alan, let's give some context. When did you first have an issue?
I'm giving you the context.
Alan, you're giving it from your perspective. People don't know what the hell you're talking about. I've got to be mindful of an audience that does not know. Hold on. I have a question. If you can't answer, we're going to terminate the phone call. It's up to you. You going to let me ask the question?
What's the question?
When did you first raise issue with the developers? What year was that, or how many years ago was it?
2019.
So 6 years ago, so prior to the current alderwoman's term. That is very important information.
It is very important.
And all of the approvals and all of the zoning, all of that stuff was in place and cemented prior to her taking office. That is correct.
No, it wasn't. The problem is this. There has been, from day one, from 2019, these guys did not show up for the original zoning hearing. It has taken me this amount of time. Last week, I spoke to, I'm calling them angels, not her person who I like too, by the way, but angels like from heaven who have called me and spoke to me. One person said they don't care if I need to, I'm going to use their name. But they told me that I've been right about this the whole time, that when they did not show up for that hearing back in 2019, this entire project should have had to go back to the entire process. This whole thing involves due process, and it's still going on, due process. Lack of and the only way that I can get the attention, or we can get the attention of anybody, is by doing this. The only person who would do this, or even might have thought of doing this, is me. And before I did it, I walked around and I spoke to people in my area. Now,
All right. What do you,
can I get
Alan? You don't have an
recalled?
unlimited amount of time. So what do you expect to accomplish
Of
by
course not.
forcing a recall election of Alderwoman Andrea Pratt?
What I hope to do, and it's already been done, I want to have people realize that what these developers are doing and how they're doing it. This is not being made up by me. It's not in my backyard.
All right, so before
It's
you
not
go on,
none of that
Alan, and
stuff.
you did make it clear that you voted for the older person, she's been to your house,
I
etc.
did.
Why are you not calling out and naming the deeds of the developers? Why are you going after a single elected official who she came into office with a lot of this stuff already like on track?
Exactly.
So why aren't you mentioning who the developers are? Why are you keeping them a secret? But it seems like you have the issue with them.
But because I cannot get out. If you have a system that's based on it's an adversarial system, right? Our court system.
Please, let's not get into the weeds here. If you have an issue with how the developers have been handling, and how, no, you're not. You're talking to yourself. If you have an issue with the developers and their process, then who are the developers? Who are they? What's the name of the company? What's the corporation? Maybe people might.
Who they are is a group called Selsner Orange. What they do is they created an LLC called Wisconsin Redevelopment. So they put up none of their own money. They put up nothing to do this. In front of them, they had another group of two black women called Anderson Webb Development. What these people do, these two women, what they do is they come into a community and they try to soft soap the community because they look like.
Alan, in your conversations with your neighbors, have you pointed out these developers or the people that you're getting signatures from? Do they know the details?
Everybody I'm talking to knows. Yeah, everybody knows the details.
How many signatures do you need?
20. I think it's 2,647. Am I going to get all these signatures?
No,
probably not.
No, you're not.
The point. Here's the reason why. Because I'm married, and I got a wife who she'll tell me to go do this. And then she doesn't realize the amount of work that it takes, okay?
Hang on a second. You were recalling Alderwoman Andrea Pratt, and you think it's not going to be successful because you're doing it because your wife told you to do it? And that's...
She's doing it. I'm doing it because I believe it's the only way I could get attention of certain people. And
so if your wife told you to stop doing it and to come home every night for dinner instead of getting signatures, who would you listen to? You listen to your drive to recall the Alderwoman, or would you listen to your wife? That's a tough one.
I have to listen to my wife.
All right, then the recall's over. So he's wasting everybody's time. The damage that he is ultimately going to do to himself and to his reputation by going through this fool's errand, it's going to be a learning experience for him and for everybody else. But here's the thing. Legally, he has the right to do it. But do you see when I pointed out who he should have an issue with? He's kept the name of the developer and the process that he disagreed with secret and silent. And he thinks to get to the means to an end is to force a recall election of the Alderwoman. And here's why that's also a fool's errand. It's all legal and legitimate if he follows all of the rules and files the paperwork, et cetera, but he doesn't even have an opponent. So what the recall does, it just puts another election on the calendar. That's all it does. It does not create a candidate. It does not fund a candidate. And if you force an election and there's no candidate, the Alderwoman is going to win. She's going to walk right back into office. But also, here's what he is doing for her. When you are being recalled as an elected official, you get to break all campaign finance rules, meaning the Alderwoman can raise unlimited money for an unlimited amount of time from sources from all over the damn planet because Scott Walker opened up those rules. So just be aware of this. And I want people to be fully versed in this because you may have an issue with your current elected official, and you may find enough neighbors or community members, business owners, and stakeholders to want to remove somebody from office. When you do that and you file the necessary paperwork and you get all the petitions together and you go down to the election commission, once that paperwork has been approved to allow you to start collecting signatures, and you're going to need 25% of the most recent gubernatorial vote. So whatever number of people voted in the most recent gubernatorial election, which would have been 2022, 25% of that number is how many signatures that you will need. And so once the recall is allowed to proceed, now remember, it only creates an election date, right? Your opponent or the person you're trying to recall can raise unlimited money. Meaning, and I'm not saying that the Alderwoman is going to do this, but these very developers that Allen and clearly at least some of his neighbors have an issue with can totally fund Alderwoman Pratt's recall campaign to whatever dollar amount they see fit. So will it ultimately become a fool's errand? Yes, but I want people to learn from this because I know folks throw around recall all the time. Oh, I don't like so-and-so, I'm going to recall them. And they have no idea what it entails. There was an attempted recall of a governor. 20 years ago, there was a recall, some successful, of many county board supervisors. There was a recall of former Alderman Mike McGee, which forced an election while he was in jail. Do y'all remember this? When Mike McGee Jr., he was incarcerated. He was being held prior to his court hearing. If he was forced, there was a forced recall election. The election was able to go through. He won from jail. They have a really low likelihood of success. And so what I say to folks is if you want to make a political statement, make sure you maximize the sentiment of those that agree with you at the next scheduled election instead of trying to force a recall, because like 98% of the time, not only are recalls going to fail, it is going to empower and embolden. Like you're giving more authority, latitude, and power, and certainly more financial prowess to the person that you were trying to recall. And sometimes it's not worth it. Because if you're really angry with an elected official, your best bet is to realize that elections have consequences, right? But sometimes we don't know, right? We vote for somebody and then things change and circumstances change, or that person that we voted for, maybe they change. And it can be very uncomfortable, and it, like we're going through right now at the federal level, but elections do have consequences. Just fire everybody up for the next regularly scheduled election and then have an actual candidate, instead of just forcing the taxpayers in the city of Milwaukee having to pay for an election, having to pay for ballots to get printed, having to pay for poll workers, having to pay for absentee ballots to be counted. It's just, no, it's a part of our democracy. At the same time, it isn't going to bear any fruit. But he said the most important part. He said his wife told him to do it. That's why I'm not married. Wish I would have a wife say, Sherwin, you need to go recall somebody. I'm on recalling nothing. You want to tell me to recall somebody? Damn. All right, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to try and answer the questions as best I can. So I did talk to the Alderwoman on Friday, Alderwoman Andrea Pratt. For those of you that do not know, she is the daughter of former Common Council President, former acting mayor and acting county executive Marvin Pratt. So she's going to come on the show. We're trying to figure out a time potentially this week, if not this week, then next week, so she can explain this entire thing. Basically, what it comes down to is this, and I don't know all the details either. Some of it I think is just personal, right? There are some people that they're so drunk on their own arrogance that if they call an elected official and if they don't get a call back in a certain amount of time, or if they do get a call back, if they do get a response and that response is not the one that they wanted to hear, then they get so angry that they want to show that elected official that, oh, you can't talk to me like that, I'm going to recall you. They use it as a thinly veiled threat. So it could be some of that. But a lot of it, I think, also is something that's very real. It's a NIMBYism, not in my backyard. I've heard even a lot of you disagree with the creation of more affordable housing because you know what it may bring, or you believe you know what it may bring. It may bring more lower class people that may act in a certain way that won't care about the surrounding community. There's always been a negative connotation around low-income housing. At the same time, we have a housing shortage and a housing crisis, not just in Milwaukee, but nationwide. We also don't like homeless people. Well, homeless people got to live somewhere. But people don't want the homeless people or the low-income people in their backyard. So the mayor also, and this goes back even prior to Cavalier Johnson being mayor, there was a school. The school closed, as have many Milwaukee public schools, because enrollment is going down. People have less children. They're sending less children to public schools. So what MPS once was several generations ago, it is a shell of its former student body population. So somebody somewhere thought it was a good idea to rezone the area where a defunct school sits and build housing there in the first district. Well, residents sometimes don't like that because they don't know how it's going to impact their property taxes. They don't know how it's going to impact the overall quality of life in their neighborhood. It might have a positive impact, but they don't know that. You know what it's like? And here's what's crazy. I bet the majority of the people in the first Alderman district, while it's diverse, there's some diversity because the first district butts up against Glendale. So there's still white folks that live in the northeastern Milwaukee district that is the first Alderman district. But you'll have black folks that won't want other black folks to move into their neighborhood, especially if there's a negative perception that those black folks are low income. It's why a couple generations ago, white folks didn't want us moving into their neighborhoods because they fear the worst. They fear, it's going to be more crime and, these people are not going to take care of their property, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe some of that's true. Maybe it isn't, but people don't want to take the risk. So you got folks that are very cognizant of their investment that they made in their home, and they don't want affordable housing in their neighborhood. They don't want low-income housing in their neighborhood, and so they're very angry. But sometimes the government needs to make unpopular decisions for the overall growth of a city. And it seems like this is one of those situations. Now, a lot of the approvals that took place happened under a previous alderperson. When Alderwoman Pratt got elected in 2023 and then reelected in 2024 to a full 4-year term, Alan, I think he's wrong. Now, we're going to have the alderwoman because I don't even know how I got in this damn fight, but I'm using it as a teachable moment. A lot of the rezonings and the approvals and the meetings, et cetera, had already taken place while Ashanti was still the alderperson. Now, here's the thing, and I don't know this for sure, but it's starting to make sense to me. If you're aware, if you're a developer or if you're Alderman Ashanti Hamilton, and let's be clear, former Alderman Ashanti Hamilton and Alan Beckman would have to be separated sometimes by the damn police because Alan would always get in Ashanti's face and he would threaten them. Like, they had a very contentious relationship. So if you are a city official and you're calling a public meeting to discuss the zoning of the school for affordable housing or to zone it for residential, you're not inviting Alan Beckman because he's disruptive and he's rude and he's disrespectful. And so Alan, being rude, disruptive, and disrespectful, probably didn't get a lot of invitations to some of those damn meetings for obvious reasons. And that's why I let him call, so y'all can hear who and what he is. Would you want him in a meeting? He would probably stand up, start yelling and screaming, stomping his feet on the ground. People like that interfere with the process. Right? So he probably was kept out of a lot of information. He probably didn't get the answers that he was seeking because nobody wanted to talk to him. Y'all know that you get more flies with the honey than you do with the vinegar. That man is the vinegar man. He's a sourpuss. So no, he probably got kept out of information, which he didn't like. And so now he thinks his last resort is a recall. And so what ultimately is going to happen is the recall is going to fail. I'll be willing to bet dollars to donuts on that. But then from that point forward, anything that he may want or need from city government, he ain't going to get. His phone calls aren't going to get answered anymore. Why would they? Some people you just can't make happy. And if they're going to threaten your job because they are unhappy or they are mad, or per his words, his wife put him up to it, why would you take a person like that seriously ever? And now he's going to show with this recall that even if he is aggrieved by an elected official, he won't have the power to remove one. So he's going to be playing all of his cards and showing all of his cards, meaning no one should be answering his phone calls ever again, because if they don't answer his phone calls and don't, satisfy his constituent request, he doesn't have the power to remove anybody from office. So ultimately, I think it's going to damage his reputation.